Hey guys, today we're going to start talking about tripods and other camera supports. And I say tripods because that's the one you're going to use most often. So here's some key things I want you to know going in. First off, tripod, 3 legs, tripod. Later down here we have monopod, 1 leg. So mono is 1, tri is 3. There are really 4 parts to a tripod. You have your sticks, called sticks. Legs are another thing that you'll hear them called. All the trendy kids call them sticks. You have tripod heads. There are 2 types. There are fluid and friction. Most of the time you are going to use a friction-based tripod head. That just means that if you tighten a screw, it moves slower. If you loosen it, it moves easier. Fluid-based, it's got hydraulic fluid in it, so it moves more, well, fluidly. So friction and fluid are the 2 types of tripod heads. Finally, next is the pan handle. That's the handle that you grab. It's kind of like a frying pan handle, and that's how you move and pan and tilt and all of those things. Pan, tilt the camera. So pan handle to pan and tilt. And then the tripod plate or the block, depending on who you're talking to, that'll be what they call those. A tripod plate is what mounts to the camera so you can take it on and off and keep it safe as you're breaking it down. Again, monopod, it's like a tripod. Really, it's just a pole with a screw in the top of it to put your camera on. Shoulder rig, we're going to see that in just a minute when we go into the studio. You hold it, goes on your shoulder rig. A crane or a jib. If you're familiar with a lot of the sports shots where they kind of zoom down, but it's not like the one with the robots and all that, but it's just a crane that they put the camera on and there's a guy who's raising it and lowering it. That's a crane or a jib. A slider, it's basically, it's a support that's on a track and you move side to side. So at a football game, the guy that's riding on the thing up and down the sidelines, that's really just a really huge slider. And then you have pan and tilt, which are your other 2 terms to know. Pan is moving the camera right and left. Tilt is up and down. Now, when it comes to panning and tilting, it is not about you. So to tilt a camera down, you move your hand up, okay? So your camera goes like this. So if I want to tilt up, I pull down, okay? Does that make sense? Same thing with pan. If I want to pan right, I move my hand left because the camera at that point will go to the right and vice versa. So pan right, I would move my hand to the left. Pan left, I would move my hand to the right. Tilt up, I would move my hand down and up and vice versa. So you got a tripod, you got 4 parts, the legs, the head, pan handle, and the plate. You have a monopod, which is a 1-legged tripod. You have a crane or a jib, a slider, a pan, a tilt. A couple of things for safety notes. Cable management. Do not put your cables under your tripod, any extra footage that you have. Leave yourself some slack, but don't coil it up. What will happen is you will trip over it, you will fall, you will grab for that tripod, it will not end well. So what I tell people is take what you need, leave it at the tripod, and then put everything else against the wall. If it's within a foot of the wall, most people don't walk that close to a wall. They're not going to trip over it. And then a camera never flies alone. Never leave your camera on a tripod when you aren't there to make sure that it's safe, okay? Don't put it up, walk away, come back, because not everybody is as cognizant of cameras as you may be, and they may knock it over and break it. Broken camera, no footage, no client, no money, no new camera. See how all that works? So hang on just a second. I'm going to jump over into the studio. We're going to look at how to set up a tripod along with some of the other things I was just telling you about. First thing I want to make completely clear to you guys, there are very expensive items that you can buy to make films. You don't have to have them to be a good filmmaker. They don't necessarily make you a better filmmaker. It's the tools you have in your brain that are far more important than the tools you have on your table. First and foremost, your supports are meant to be safe. They're to be safe for you, safe for your equipment. It doesn't matter if you have a $1,200 tripod and you break the camera because you do it wrong or you use the tripod wrong. Keep that in mind. Safety first. A camera never flies alone, and I'll get into that in just a minute when I get to talking about tripods. Your cables. Don't spool the cables up under your tripod. Here's what will happen if you do. Your foot will get caught, you will fall. When you fall, your natural reaction is to reach for something. You're going to reach for the tripod, which has your camera on top of it. Spool your cables close to the wall. We'll talk about that again in class a lot more in depth as we move forward with using power and other cables. So here on the table behind me, I have a variety of camera supports. Again, this shoulder mount, it's called a shoulder mount because it mounts on your shoulder, cost about $300. Now, as a beginning filmmaker, you probably don't have the $300 for this super fancy shoulder mount. But I can assure you that you probably have the $7 it takes to build one of these. Now, this is just PVC pipe. This is some black electrical tape and some pipe insulation just for your shoulder. And it does the same thing. You don't have the fancy triggers for focus and zoom and all of that, but you can do all of that by taking your hand off of here. Again, $7 versus a couple $100. If you're saving money on your equipment, you're making more money in the end. And now I'm not saying build cheap, crappy stuff. I'm saying take your time, build it right. It will do just as well as the more expensive kind. So those are shoulder mounts. This is a tabletop dolly. You basically put it on a table or a floor. You mount your camera to the top of it up here, and you roll it across whatever you're going to do for a nice glide and dolly shot. The piece that everyone knows is the tripod. Now, I found the biggest tripod I could to show you how safe you should be with a tripod. Now, most people, the first thing they do when they get a tripod to set it up is they do this, and they open it out. The problem with that is you're working further and further away from your body. You're liable to break something or get hurt. So the first step is not to spread the legs, not to open the legs on the tripod. Okay? First step, do not open the legs on the tripod. The first thing you do is you extend the legs as far as they'll go. Most of your tripods are going to have multiple layers of legs. So this has 2 stop legs. So notice I'm keeping it close to my body. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to hit anybody with it because it's close to me. So now I'm just going to extend these down. You know, you want to extend your tripod legs all the way out before you do anything else. It is easier to lower your tripod than to raise it once you put a camera on it. So now, all the way down, it's set. It's good to go. Notice the first thing that I did was I put my hands right here and kind of pushed down a little bit, simulating what the camera would weigh. Now, things that I would have done before I got to this point, I would have gone to make sure that I was going to be on a flat surface, making sure that it was going to be a hard surface so that I had the right tripod legs for it, right feet on the tripod, and I knew beforehand what I was going to be doing. It goes back to pre-production. The prior planning prevents poor performance. Now, this tripod's a little bit more advanced, but they're all pretty much the same. Set your legs, push down. Not trying to break the legs, just push down to make sure that these are locked, because occasionally what happens, this will be halfway undone, and that's just enough to make it slide. Well, if you put a heavy enough camera on that, it's going to fall all the way to the floor. So, those are locked, hands on, press, and now I'm going to move my pan handle towards me. Remember, frying pan handle, you don't fry with your hand over the arm over the bacon grease. You keep it close to you. Now, another part of the tripod, you got your legs, and this is the head of the tripod. The head's where all the magic happens. So, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the tripod plate. This is what your camera mounts on. Notice that I removed it from the tripod, and I didn't try to put the camera up here and spin it. Remove that from the tripod. Now, I have a ridiculously small camera for this large tripod, but what I'm going to do, put the plate on the bottom of every camera. You're going to have a screw hole and a support there, so put that in there, and I'm going to screw it down. I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight. One of the things that I always do is once I get it, I take the plate and I try to spin it. If I can't spin it, I've done a good job. Now I'm going to mount this up here. Now, until I lock everything down on this camera, on this tripod, I'm not going to let go. Because if let's say a leg is short or the lock doesn't work or what have you, I can reach and grab the camera. So I know it's there, I know it's safe, I'm going to let it go. Earlier I mentioned that a camera never flies alone, because while you may know you've set this tripod up, there may be someone else in your workspace who's not aware of it, who may walk backwards, knock it over. So if you ever leave your tripod, here is what I suggest. Take your camera off, put it on the ground below your tripod. That way if it falls over, it's not going to hit your camera. Sure, someone may step on it, but they're probably just going to trip over it and fall, hurt themselves, and not your camera. Your camera is replaceable, so are those people, but for your client, they care more about the camera. So back to the top it goes. Click, mount, lock it in. Now I'm ready to shoot. Notice a couple of things about how I set this up. Notice I have the gap here between these two legs. I did that on purpose so that I could, if I needed to, slide in here like this. I have my arm on the panhandle. I have a hand on the legs. Because sometimes as you move, your head may be too tight on there and it may knock or may push over. If you keep your hand there, you're going to get through that. It'll also make for a steadier shot because you know that the tripod is not going to move. Now, that is it for setting up a tripod. That is what you are going to do most often when it comes to video production because it's the standard. It creates a nice steady shot. For example, right now, my tripod that I'm filming this on is sitting on the other side of the room. It hasn't moved, it hasn't wiggled, it hasn't taken a breath, it hasn't coughed, it hasn't done all of those things that if you were trying to hand hold a camera that you would do. Now, another thing that I want you to keep in mind, when your camera is up here, it should be being used. Don't just store a camera on a tripod, okay? What happens are the legs get weak, they start to break, next time you go to use it, camera falls. So, first step in setting up a tripod is not to spread the legs, not to open the legs out. First step is to extend the legs all the way down, then expand them, separate them, check to make sure that your camera is steady or your tripod is steady before you put a camera on it. Push down a little bit on the tripod, and then you take the block off of the top of the tripod head, you mount it to the camera, you make sure that the camera doesn't move either direction, and then you mount the camera. When you are done, the first thing that happens is that camera gets taken off the tripod and put somewhere safe. So I'm going to put mine over here on the table. Now closing up a tripod, first thing you do, pull your panhandle down like this so that it's out of your way. Now, bring your legs together, pick it up, and do the exact opposite of what you did when you brought it out. You close the legs, like so. Then when you get down to the bottom, it's a lot easier because you can grab the bottom and push. And I did grab, again, the biggest, most complex tripod that I could find. And now my tripod is safe, secure, and can go under my arm like this. Tripod parts, legs, head, plate, plate's where the camera goes. All right? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. Thank you so much.